This episode of the D-Lew Podcast is brought to you by Goalie Nutrition. As someone who's used Goalie for quite some time, I can tell you that they're not only very good, but they're very beneficial. My favorite are the Super Green Gummies. The Super Green Gummies are uniquely crafted with a spectrum of essential nutrients such as vitamins A, B12, folic acid, and thiamine. It supports a healthy liver function, healthy nervous and immune system, digestive health, a boost to your metabolism, and overall health and well-being. There are no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or colors from artificial sources. They're vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and gelatin-free. All loyal listeners of the D-Lew Podcast get a special 10% discount at checkout. Go to goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. That's goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. This podcast is a Believe Network and Siete production. Welcome to another edition of the D-Lew Podcast, brought to you by Believe Network. I'm your host, Derrick T. Lewis, and wow. Had a fun couple of days, at the latter part of the week, the weekend, and up till now. The cat's out of the bag. I can officially talk about it. That other reason why I was in LA back in late January, early February is because I was a contestant on Wheel of Fortune for WWE Week. That's right. Cat's out of the bag. I had to keep my lips sealed, if you will. But it's out. We were granted permission from Wheel. They sent us our pictures that we can post. I'm actually partnered up with WWE superstar Sonya Deville. Now, for those that know or don't know, Sonya and I go back, 11 years. 11 years. We met at a TV pilot that was being done in New York City, and we just struck up a friendship right then and there. And I supported her through all that she was doing in mixed martial arts when she was in LA. And then, of course, when she got signed to WWE, nothing but love and support for her. So it was really good to catch up with her, and you'll check it out. So again, we're going to be seen on next Tuesday, March 28th. On ABC, which check out your local listings for Wheel of Fortune. But over the weekend, I didn't have any wrestling shows, thank God. But I actually did go to Icons of Wrestling in Philly, in South Philly, at the ECW Arena, now the 2300 Arena. And I had a chance to catch up with some wrestlers that I currently work with, that I worked with in the past, and I also got to catch up with some legends, like Tatanka and IRS, the $1 Million Man. The Blue Meanie. Shout out to the Blue Meanie. Go to his pro wrestling store and get some BWO merch, because I definitely got a t-shirt. Shout out to Meanie. Brutal Bob Evans. John Morrison. Melina. Enzo Amore. My goodness, the Nasty Boys. Oh my God, I had a chance to talk to Knobs and Sags. The Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. I had a chance to talk to him, and I had a chance to talk to Jacques Rougeau, who once went by the Mountie. So much fun. So much excitement at Icons of Wrestling, and it was just nice to be a fan, because you sometimes forget, why you're in this, and hey, I was a fan. I'm still a fan of wrestling. So, speaking of which, the rave reviews about the Monster Factory 6-part docuseries that's on Apple TV Plus. If you haven't done so, please, I urge you. Even if you, I believe they have a free trial if you're brand new. So I would definitely recommend getting, Apple TV and tuning in to watching all, the Monster Factory. It's a 6-part docuseries. They're around 30 minutes each. And when I tell you, it tells some compelling stories from all 5 of the featured wrestlers that are on there. But yours truly is featured throughout the series. And again, huge shout out to the team at Apple TV. Huge shout out to Danny Cage. Like I said, they got me my start in professional wrestling at the Monster Factory, and allowing me to be a part of this project. So unbelievable. Please tune in. But speaking of professional wrestling, this week I have from New Japan Pro Wrestling and he actually lives out in New Zealand. This is the Underboss, the Rogue General, Bad Luck Fale of the Bullet Club. And, we talk about his early days, playing professionally for rugby in Japan, how he got started wrestling in Japan, his brief tour of the United States, and ultimately what started the Bullet Club, which one of the most, popular acts in all of professional wrestling. And again, he has a compelling story. He really goes into detail about his wrestling career. And let's not wait any longer. My interview with Bad Luck Fale starts right now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor, and I mean truly an honor to have this individual on the D-Lew Podcast. He's a former 3-time never openweight tag team champion, a former IWGP tag team champion, and a former IWGP intercontinental champion, the Underboss, the Rogue General, Bad Luck Fale. Welcome to the D-Lew Podcast. How are you, man?
I'm fine, man, and thank you for having me on.
It's like I said, it's an honor for me, and I know we're like thousands of miles away from each other. So just for you to, take the time out of your schedule to come talk to me on my show, I definitely appreciate it. But speaking of which, again, you are located in New Zealand, but let's talk about life growing up in, between New Zealand and Tonga. What was life for you growing up as a kid?
Yeah, I moved to New Zealand when I was 6, so I grew up with my grandparents.
Okay.
Until I was 6, and then moved to New Zealand. That's when I actually got to know my parents, and I was here until I graduated from high school and then left for Japan. So I've been in Japan longer than I have been in any of those other 2 countries.
Oh, wow. Okay. And I was going to get into that. So, obviously you being a rugby is huge in New Zealand, obviously. It's like that's a big sport over there. So you were a rugby player for De La Salle College. Then you got a scholarship to Tokiyama University, and you play for a Japanese team called the Fukuoka Sanix Blue. So talk about what rugby meant to you and how that was a huge part of your life.
Yeah, rugby was my way out, so to speak, because I grew up at the let's say the bad area of Auckland, New Zealand, the worst area. So rugby was my way out of the how do you say it? Ghetto, the New Zealand ghetto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I knew it was the only way to get out, so I immersed myself in it, and was lucky enough to get a scholarship to go to Japan.
Wow. So what position did you play in rugby? Again, I'm a little familiar with rugby, but not all the way. So what position were you in? Talk about some of the, the way of play in regards to rugby.
My position was number 8. To compare that with maybe football, I'd say that's kind of like a linebacker.
Okay.
Yeah. So powerful, defense, attack type of position.
I have to say, because for the rugby games that I did see, like rugby players are probably one of the toughest athletes in the world, because you guys don't have any pads on at all. So, I mean, I'm in the United States, and American football, they have the pads and they have the helmets and all that stuff. But the fact that you guys are really hitting out there with no pads on at all it's wild to me. I'm like, wow, these are some tough athletes, man, to withstand that type of punishment. So how did professional wrestling come into your life? Were you a fan growing up, or did when you were in Japan, was that how everything kind of just fell in line for you?
Yeah, just to add on to what you're saying there, rugby is one of the toughest sports, but I do give it up to football as well, because there's a reason why you wear those pads.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
You can't say rugby is the toughest sport. I give it up to the football players as well, because for a rugby player to go in and play the way those guys play, it's very different type of rules, and vice versa. It's hard for both type of players to play on the other game, because the rules are different and it's hard in its own way. So I can't put down rugby as the top toughest game in the world. I'd say football is right there with it. But
Sure.
uh, finishing from rugby in Japan, I had no other choice but to go back to New Zealand. But I was lucky to have some people who helped me out and uh, work with my visa to be able to stay in Japan longer and try out for wrestling. So when I retired from rugby, I wanted to stay in Japan, and a friend of mine um, offered me a chance to go and try out for wrestling and a chance to stay in Japan. So that's how it all started.
Now, did you ever pay attention to wrestling, in any time in your life beforehand, or that was your first eye on pro wrestling?
That was the first time I found out about Purores, Japanese pro wrestling, whereas before I knew all about the American style, the lucha libre and
Hmm.
English type wrestling, but I had never ever thought Japan was up there in wrestling until I tried out and actually looked in. So I went and tried out before I even knew it was New Japan, and I did have my friend offered me a tryout with New Japan, so I signed up for that, and then another friend of mine heard about that and said, "Oh, there's another company you should try out for too," and there was Dragon Gate.
Right.
And when I went and tried out for New Japan, not knowing what it was, no idea it was the top company. Tried out for that, and then I went in while I was still waiting for Dragon Gate to get back to me because I had written them, asking them that I wanted to come and try out and stuff. And luckily, they didn't reply back because New Japan wouldn't. Getting into New Japan was the better choice.
Yeah, you hear so many stories about the New Japan dojo, and obviously you being a young lion. So Nagata, Takahashi, and Jado were your trainers. So let's take a deep dive a little bit as far as what that training was like. Going from, obviously you coming from rugby, going to pro wrestling, but what was that training like for you?
Well, here's something that most people don't know is in Japan, your coach is everyone. So at the dojo, most of the wrestlers come into the dojo and train every single day. So, for example, imagine being at the training center, right?
Hmm.
And 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 John Cena comes in and trains you for one day.
Right.
Roman Reigns comes in tomorrow and trains you one day. Imagine that the top wrestlers every single day will come and train you. So you're being taught by the most elite guys in the company, and it's not just once; it's pretty much every day. So over there, I had mostly Jaro, Nagara, Shinsuke, um, and a few guys here and there, but those guys were the ones who were there often. But every day, somebody would turn up and they'd want to add their knowledge, so which was so good because I got to learn so fast that your career or your training just goes from 0 to 100 in the space of a few months.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, I heard it's really tough, to withstand, to go through that dojo. As a matter of fact, one of my guys at the Monster Factory, he just went out to the LA dojo a few months ago, and he was telling me about how intense that training is. It's one of the toughest dojos in the entire world. And, that
Yeah.
when you talk about learning respect, respect for the business, you better come in there with it for sure. Now,
Yeah.
was it difficult transitioning from rugby to pro wrestling, or was it an easier transition? Because a lot of times when a lot of football players here in America, they say how it's very, very similar in a sense. It was really easy to transition. So was it an easy transition for you?
No, it wasn't. The funny story, when I found out I was going to go try out, I thought, because rugby was really hard, and I thought rugby was tough. I thought
Right.
the training was crazy in rugby, and I thought, you know what, I'll go to wrestling. That's easier. Uh, it's an easier sport than rugby. So once I got in there, I quickly understood and realized that it was way tougher than any sport I've ever played.
Wow, wow, wow. So now let's go back to your first. You talk about your first wrestling match that you had. Once you were done training, who was your first match? And did you have the jitters, or were you just really confident going in there and getting the job done?
Here's another thing that most people don't understand is the training you do with New Japan, they don't teach you how to do pro wrestling. They teach you how to be real fighters. They'll teach you how to box, how to grapple, how to wrestle, amateur wrestling first. I didn't know how to do a lockup until 2 weeks before debuting. Right, 2 weeks. They told me I was debuting. 2 weeks before, one of my coaches said, "Hey, ask Carl Anderson how to do a lockup."
Ask Carl Anderson how to
And
do a
that's
lockup. Wow.
And he told me how to do my first lockup, and it's more like they throw you into the lion's den, and you got to survive. If not, this business is not for you. So they'll teach you how to maintain your how to be a lion, in training. But when you get in the ring, you have to figure it out yourself. And my first match was versus Nakanishi Manabu. When I debuted at that time, 2010, he was one of the top guys in Japan, and he was known for being the hardest hitter, hardest chop guy in the company. And this guy was about what, maybe 340 pounds.
Wow.
And he could do everything everybody could do. And it wasn't until he hurt himself in 2011, I think. Up until then, he was literally one of the most feared Japanese wrestlers in Japan. And he was my first match. They put me up against this guy, and I had 2 weeks to prepare to wrestle this guy in Korakuen. And to debut in Korakuen, you're one of the elites, they say. If you debut at Korakuen, you're one of the elite young lions. If you debut at the Tokyo Dome, you're a freaking superstar.
Right, right.
Yeah, but it was very nerve-wracking. I'd say I've watched that match maybe twice because it was so embarrassing the way I wrestled, and plus he beat the shit out of me. Yeah. 2 weeks, a week after that, I couldn't eat. I had to sip my food through a straw because I didn't break it, but it dislocated my jaw for a whole week before I could actually realign. But that was it, man. It was that first match was a test if I wanted to really be in this business or not. But
right. You hear stories about that a lot.
That's tough. After that match, I walked backstage. I was so nervous, so tired. My legs were wobbling, and everybody didn't like what they saw, which of course I hadn't wrestled in my life. But a lot of the guys backstage just gave me the congratulations, but nobody, I knew, I fucked up. That was a shitty match. And the only person who gave me a positive review was Carl Anderson, because I came to him and I said, "Oh, what did you think?" And he goes, "That white tape on your wrist look good."
Backhanded compliment. Oh, wow.
He was so man. I give it to him, man. Thank you, Carl. You had to find something to cheer me up a little bit.
For sure. And speaking of Carl Anderson, I was going to say, speaking of Carl Anderson, it was later on that year, you took a part of the 2010 J Sports Crown Openweight 6-man tag team tournament with Carl Anderson and Giant Bernard, who we know as Albert, all in your first year of the business. So was that, I guess, was it bringing it a little bit easier for you being in that 6-man tag along with the guy that was mentoring you?
Yeah, of course. At the time, myself, Finn Balor, and Carl Anderson and Tamatonga.
Mm-hmm.
So there was only four of us: Tamatonga, Carl Anderson, Finn Bela, and John Bernard. We were the only four foreigners for years. Were the only ones who were allowed or hired by the company during that time. They wouldn't bring anybody else because they had no money then. So we came in when the company was at its lowest. But yeah, for about 2 or 3 years, we were the only four. Every tour in and out, day in day out, we were the only four. And it was just when what's his name, when John Bernard left that the Bullet Club came along, because it made sense. We're the only ones there, and that's how we ended up together.
Right. And in between that 6-man tag and you returning, to as far as Bullet Club's concerned, you took a 14-month journey to the United States for more training. So was that something that you decided to do, or was some of the higher ups in New Japan say, hey, let's go get some more training under your belt overseas and come back stronger? Was that the case?
That is the case. At the same time, it's timing. Okada had just finished his 2-year excursion, so up next, I was next in line. So when Okada came back to Japan, because he was with TNA for about 2 years, and when he came back to Japan in 2011, then it was my turn to go out for a couple of years. And 2012, they sent me to St. Louis to train with David Richards and Tony Kozina. And I trained with them for a year. I was supposed to train for 2 years, but after a year, the big opportunity with Bullet Club was developed. So they shortened my trip to a year, and that's when I went back.
So coming into the United States and when you're beginning to learn the American style, was there a huge, I guess, learning curve in regards to what you learned in Japan versus what you're learning in the United States? Because obviously with the United States, it is a little bit different than strong style. So talk about I guess, was there any challenges or not once you got to America and began to learn the American style?
Yeah, I didn't really learn much from the American style, because I was doing a lot of the indies, and I quickly figured out that most bookers would just book me as a monster, where I'd just squash guys in 1 or 2 minutes.
Right.
And I thought, I'm not learning much just by doing that. So I started to pull back on going on the indie shows and just trained harder with Davey and Tony. And I learned more from, training with those guys than going out and doing all the matches around the States, which didn't really help. But just being out of Japan and going along to these shows, I learned in a different way, just by watching and understanding what goes on behind the scenes and that kind of stuff.
Right. And again, the reason why I asked that is because, like I said, I've been watching pro wrestling over 40 years, and I know there is a difference, when I've watched, New Japan, especially, with Muda, Kensei Sasaki, Masahiro Chono, the style was just very, very gritty, you know what I mean? And versus where I am, there's a lot of showmanship, and there's the working and the things like that. So there is a big difference there. And that's why I was wondering, as far as how was that learning curve for you, when you did, do your 14-month excursion to the United States. But let's talk about the Bullet Club. So whose idea was it? How did it all come to be?
It was a spur of the moment thing, right? What had happened was I had 2 years to go to America and try and survive as a wrestler there. But was cut short because Finn Balor was, I think he was getting bored. He was getting bored of doing the New Japan scene because he had done everything. He had, been champion, he'd been
Right.
champion and Super Junior Cup.
Super Junior. Right.
He'd done it for years, and he was getting bored, and I think he wasn't feeling challenged, and I think he was thinking of leaving the company. And that's when they came up with the idea of turning him into a heavyweight. But obviously, he was a smaller guy, so they needed some sort of backing, kind of like Shawn Michaels and Diesel kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, so they called me and they asked me what I thought. And I said, I wanted to stay an extra year and relax, but I thought, there's a great opportunity, get back early, make some money. And that's when it started. So when I got back, they put me as his bodyguard.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first, when I made my return appearance, and the amount of booing, geez, the New Japan fans had never really experienced a heel turn like that before.
Right.
And the amount of hate and anger directed at the office to get me and Finn Balor and get us fired was real, because the president came to us and said, "Hey, man, the fans want to fire you guys," which is, that's how passionate they were.
Right, that you're doing your job, right?
Yeah, and I think the office saw, man, we can do something about this. If this amount of hate is getting people so ramped up, we got to do something about it. And then, obviously there was only 4 of us at the company at the moment, and that's when they decided, let's put them together. So it was a spur of the moment thing.
Wow. And it ultimately, this was basically about a bunch of foreign wrestlers forming a group to take on, the juggernaut that is New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's kind of similar to what the NWO was. And, when you were talking about, fans writing letters or fans, being upset, that sound like when Hogan turned heel in 96 and joined the NWO. When I tell you, there were, and mind you, there was no social media back then. You know what I mean? So it was a huge thing when everyone's picking up the phone. Hey, did you hear Hulk Hogan turned? He's a bad guy, and it's like, and just seeing the turn as it happened, I couldn't believe it. I never would have ever thought that Hogan would have turned heel. And just hearing interviews over the years, if it was Eric Bischoff or whoever it is, and they were saying how they were getting letters. Fans were really writing letters. That just lets you know that it was working. You know what I mean? It was definitely working. They're really passionate about the product.
Yeah. That's how it felt.
So at that time, though, 2013, did you foresee Bullet Club becoming a global brand?
Hell no. Hell no. But we knew something was happening, because when they put us together, it just felt so right.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were the only 4 there, for the last couple of years, we thought, we'll just, because we have fun outside of the ring when we're together, let's just go in the ring and do the same thing. Because, of course, we're big fans of NWO and big fans of the Click and all that kind of thing. So we thought, hey, here's our chance to have fun like those guys when they, were at the top. So, yeah, every time we had matches, we'll just go in there, and pretty much that's why the Too Sweet came back, because we're just in there enjoying ourselves, paying tribute to the guys who came before us. And there you go. It just steamrolled from there. Because back then, even then, the internet wasn't so big. Twitter has just only been around a couple of years. Facebook has been around a couple of years. And, we're still trying to figure out how to use social media.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think New Japan wasn't even in America yet. It wasn't there until maybe 2015, 16. So I think because we were having so much fun, and really the people who knew about the New Japan and follow New Japan would get, I don't know, videos maybe, or film, or hear it somehow on the internet.
Yeah.
And I'll go because New Japan saw us as just, these dumb foreigners. We went into every match trying to force the company to recognize who we were and that we were worth something. And one of the ways to do that was trying to get out into the world. How do we get out to the world? How do we get ourselves known around the world so the company can understand that there's value in us? And one of the main things we decided was wherever we go, when we go out drinking, go out eating, we got to go together. At the same time, whatever merchandise we have to wear. So that's why the shirt became a big thing, right? We started whatever the merch they gave us, we'd wear it together, take photos, and put it out on our respective social media. And that's when it started, just slowly. And then because everybody was hearing about, there's this new thing called the Bullet Club, and then more fans would stop following it. We heard about this, we heard about that, and it just slowly steamrolled. But it wasn't until when what's his name, AJ Styles came along, and he had a bigger Twitter follower, right? And that's when the new Bullet Club shirt came out, just when he was coming in, and then we all started doing the same thing, wearing those shirts. The Bucks came along; they had their own followers. Luke Gallows came along, had his own followers, and it was just the right people at the right time with the right amount of followers, and us doing the same thing, hanging out. Some of these guys don't drink, some of these guys don't like seafood or whatever, but we made sure we all got together. Whatever merchandise we got, let's take a photo. If it's an AJ shirt, let's all take a photo. If it's a Young Bucks shirt, let's all wear it, take a photo. And then we all put it out on our social medias, and that's how it started. That's when it started to steamroll more, because the fans were able to see what's going on throughout Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
This episode of the D-Lew Podcast is brought to you by Goalie Nutrition. As someone who's used Goalie for quite some time, I can tell you that they're not only very good, but they're very beneficial. My favorite are the Super Green Gummies. The Super Green Gummies are uniquely crafted with a spectrum of essential nutrients such as vitamins A, B12, folic acid, and thiamine. It supports a healthy liver function, healthy nervous and immune system, digestive health, a boost to your metabolism, and overall health and well-being. There are no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or colors from artificial sources. They're vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and gelatin-free. All loyal listeners of the D-Lew Podcast get a special 10% discount at checkout. Go to goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. That's goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. Yeah, I gotta tell you, man, like, if you ever go to a wrestling show, and it let me know that it was working. When you go to any wrestling show, I don't care if it was on the Indies or WWE, if you could see an NWO shirt, Austin 316, and Bullet Club. Like, those are the constant shirts that you see a lot. You know what I mean? So that just let me know. I'm like, okay, I said, this thing is really, really getting strong globally. I mean, the fact that people in the United States are caring about another promotion outside of the country, that's huge. That's really, really huge. So speaking of which, let's take a deep dive on this one. Let's talk about the Underboss Rogue General character with you and your role in the Bullet Club, and just describe your style. What in your mind was your role in the Bullet Club?
Yeah, so because I was the bodyguard type guy, my job, and this is real in wrestling. You have to take your character or whatever job you have to take it seriously. Because if you don't, whatever goes around around you is not going to work.
Right.
So if you're given a directive, follow it to the T. Figure out how it's done and follow it. Because if you don't, they'll easily change it. We'll get somebody who can do it. Or you're not going to get popular or whatever. But you got to do it. It's just like being in a movie. If you're given a role in a movie, you can't break out a character to do something else. You have to do your job. And I think I've survived and become really successful in my company because I've done exactly what they want me to do. So the job of being the bodyguard, I did it. Bodyguards don't talk, right? Bodyguards just do their job, protect the number one guy, or that's it. And I used to be a freaking security guard back in the day, and I stayed there, smile or talk, I don't fucking promos and all that shit.
Right.
Yeah, and that was the bodyguard until it got to a point where I thought, it's time to change it up. A lot of the guys had changed, a lot of guys had left, and I thought, I want to change this up. So that's where the Rogue General came along because, I thought, maybe it's time to start talking a little bit, and have a lot more fun because things were changing and sometimes I didn't agree with it. And I thought, if I push back on this kind of stuff, I need a character that's, or I need to change who I am to be able to push back on that kind of stuff. And that's where the Rogue General came. The rogue meaning, outside of the norms.
Right. Now, let's talk about that early time, Prince Devitt, Finn Balor, Machine Gun, Doc Gallows, AJ Styles, Tama Tonga, Young Bucks, Kenny, Takahashi. That version of the Bullet Club, and obviously there's been so many different versions of the Bullet Club. What is your favorite version of the Bullet Club and why?
I'd say my favorite would be the AJ Styles era. Right, that's my favorite. Second to that would be the first one. The first one, we had so much fun until David left. But the second one was actually when a lot of things in my own career changed, because the one thing that was different between David and Styles, was the difference was David was the leader, right? And of course that was his job. His job was to be the leader of the Bullet Club,
right?
And it took it to where it was before he left. But when AJ Styles came, he had the same job, but the difference was he came in there and didn't want to be the leader, right? He the first night when he won that bout, when he won that battle for Okada, we were all walking back at the hotels, and he pulled us all aside and he said, "This is not about me. This is all about us."
Right.
And he never ever said, me. Oh, he said, if we're gonna succeed from here, we're gonna succeed together. And while he was there, the short amount of time he was there, everyone's career just catapulted.
Yeah, I can still remember, I think it was Wrestle Kingdom 9, and that's when Jim Ross and I think it was Matt Stryker had did the American broadcast, and that's when it was really, really growing. And at that time, it was just like, wow. I actually watched that Wrestle Kingdom. I actually stood up and watched it. I ordered it, and you could just feel there was a different energy with New Japan when AJ got there. And it was his next level because that dude can go. He has a motor. I was watching AJ Styles during the early days of TNA, and he was the face of TNA. And I just think that, to your point, when you talk about him having his own following, a lot of those fans did go over, with him. And I think and also too, it was just a perfect storm that happened at one time where everyone brought their collective, experiences, fan bases together and formed a common goal, which was to take the Bullet Club to the next level and taking it higher and taking it higher.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So let's talk about your first singles title, your first and only singles title, where you defeated Shinsuke Nakamura for the Intercontinental Championship. How was that? Was that one of the biggest highlights of your career, winning that singles belt? And did that cement and solidify everything you set out to do in the business?
Yeah, it's one of the top highlights of my career. But once again, I was still a rookie, and I still didn't understand how matches worked. I still didn't have enough experience to be able to do that kind of singles run or match, because that 2014, no 15, no 14, New Japan Cup, they I went to the finals with Shinsuke, and I had two big matches in one day, and never have I done anything like that. I couldn't even do one proper match, but to have one match and then do a finals on the same day was mind blowing to me. And I knew my experience wasn't there, but man, Shinsuke, that's the night Shinsuke made me a superstar. Because yeah, at the same time he taught me a lesson. There was a second time my jaw got dislocated and I broke my nose that night too.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he taught me a great lesson. But after that New Japan Cup, man, things changed for me, because people in Japan started saying my name. I'd hang out with the boys and stuff, but they'll say, "Oh, it's David. Oh, it's it's Collins." But I had never heard my name. It wasn't until after the New Japan Cup that I started hearing fans go, "Oh, it's Fale, it's Fale." But then when I had the title match with him and won that belt, man, made me a superstar, and I thank that guy. Because he of course he was one of the top guys at the time. The Intercontinental belt was higher than the IWGP at the time, because at Tokyo Dome, IWGP belt was a semi-main event, and Shinsuke would always have the finals with the Intercontinental. So it was more. What's the word? More. So the belt had more
prestige
than the IWGP at the time, because Shinsuke had made it that high, and the fans would rather watch that during that time, right? So for me to win it off him, it was just, it told me the company, saw value in myself. At the same time, I was still a rookie, and for Shinsuke to be able to make me a superstar says a lot about him, right?
Right. And look where he is now, and still going.
Exactly.
and really definitely made him a name for himself on a global basis, because obviously WWE is, they're the worldwide leader, and everyone knows now who Shinsuke Nakamura is. So yes, indeed. Now, Wrestle Kingdom. Let's just talk about the event itself. Obviously, when you talk about, we obviously here in the United States, obviously we have the Super Bowl, the World Series, the NBA Finals, and things like that. But WrestleMania is, wrestling's big event for WWE. If it's Double or Nothing for AEW, if it's for you guys, it's Wrestle Kingdom. Then Mexico is Triple Mania. For you, what does it mean performing at Tokyo Dome on January 4th, being on that card for Wrestle Kingdom every year?
Oh, it's everything. Everybody wants to be on the top number one show. So you work all year, and you expect to have some sort of match. If you're one of the main guys or top guys at the company, you expect to be on those shows. So it is hard. It's hard when you don't have a match on there, or you're not even on the show at the show.
Right.
Something you work towards all year, but it just feels different. It's very different. You may have a Tokyo Dome about once or twice during the year, but the January 4th, you just feel differently, because everybody's there. People from all over the world are flying in. and it's just that feeling is different.
I've been to two WrestleManias, and one of my goals is to attend a Wrestle Kingdom in Tokyo. That's definitely one of my goals as a fan to attend, just to get the experience of. Hey, I've never been to Japan before, but I did this. That's definitely an event that I want to experience as a longtime wrestling fan. Now, 6 years ago, you opened up the Fale Dojo in New Zealand, and talk about why you decided to open up a school. What are some of the values and principles you teach? And who are some of the students that came out of that school?
Why did I start it? Because I played rugby and that career ended pretty early. You learn your lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I started thinking about the future, and I started thinking about what if I can, when will I retire, and also if I get hurt, well, what do I do then? So the idea about the school would be something I can carry on after wrestling. Um, but I also based it out in the sorry, I'm getting a blocked nose here. I also based it out in Auckland, New Zealand, because I wanted to give the youth here a chance. Much like I did when I got to go to Japan. So creating pathways and also spreading the New Japan brand out here is one of the main reasons. A couple of guys that's been through here, I'd say Hinare in New Japan. Got one young lion who's there now, Oscar Lew.
Mm-hmm.
But sorry about that noise. We also had Robbie Eagles had come through here. Gino Gambino had come through here. Aaron Soloff over at AEW come through. Just to name a few.
That's good, man. And it's always good to have it tied to New Japan. You know what I mean? In fact, the things that you learn in there and things you can bring back to your school, and thus creating an opportunity for, like you said, the youth, because of things you've learned obviously through rugby and team sports. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
The 2020 pandemic, and I know they had closed a lot of the borders and everything. So as a wrestler, as a obviously, you're running your own business. How did you weather the storm getting through that period? Because I know it affected everybody, but for you specifically, as a professional wrestler, not being able to go to your own promotion, New Japan Pro Wrestling, how difficult was that for you going through the pandemic?
Yeah, it was very, like everyone knows, it's hard, especially trying to keep the school open. Because I did have a lot of students from all overseas, from all over the world who were here. So when the borders closed, they were stuck here. So, of course, it was hard for me because I couldn't go back to Japan and work because they were still going, and our guys in America and States were still going. But it was tough because I couldn't wrestle. At the same time, I had my students here, so I made do. We'd just wrestle each other and train every day. That's how we cope.
Good, good, good. Because I know, like I said, I'm with Monster Factory, and I know I think from maybe March until like October, it was closed. You know what I mean? And it was, even for me, it was like, because I'm an actor too. There was no auditions. It was probably one of the hardest things that I had to to deal with, as far as how do I navigate through this. We're
Yeah,
sitting
yeah,
still. We're not doing anything. It's like, what do we do? And I found stuff to do. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And that's it. And that in itself is, I think a lot of creatives, especially you yourself, hey, we're going to train every day. You know what I mean? And make the most of this type of
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
What's the biggest piece of advice anyone has given you in pro wrestling?
There was a lot. Uh, I'll give you two.
Okay.
One I can't remember It may have been Samoa Joe,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't remember. Is open your ears and shut your mouth. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, I can't remember who it was, but it was don't be shit.
I
Don't be
like it.
shit.
I like it. I like it. Now, do you have any advice for any aspiring wrestlers that are listening to this podcast right now?
Yes, I do. Here it is. He who says he can and he who says he can't are both right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I'll explain it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Right. In this business, it's very easy to give up.
Mm-hmm.
So if you tell yourself you can't do it, you won't be able to do it. But if you tell yourself you can, you will.
It's all up here.
It is.
Yeah. And
In
that's the
this
hardest.
business,
Yeah.
in this business, it's all up here.
Because one little thing can just throw you off your game, and you just have to just be mentally strong.
Exactly.
You know what I mean, to get through those tough times. And trust me, even as a ring announcer, I've gone through my tough times of just getting through, because that people think I'm just standing in there,
Yeah.
reading off. No, that is every job in pro wrestling has its challenges. I don't care if you're working in Gorilla. I don't care if you're doing camera, if you're in the ring, obviously wrestling, if you're ring announcing, if you're doing commentary. Everyone's job comes with some type of difficulty, because there's a level of consistency that we have. There's a standard, you know what I mean? From guys way before us that were in this industry that we have to continue to work towards. So I totally get exactly what you're saying, as far as definitely being mentally strong, as far as longevity in this business. But do you have any aspirations at this juncture, in this stage in your career, to wrestle for another promotion, preferably in the United States, whether it's WWE, AEW, Impact, MLW, or Ring of Honor?
Right now, I'm doing pretty well with New Japan, and they're looking after me really good. But if the offer's there, if there's like an inter company thing going on, I would love to work with any of these companies. I missed out on the big chance of being able to wrestle there because, I was doing really well at New Japan. So if the chance is there, I'll jump at it. If it's an inter-company opportunity. But right now, I'm enjoying where I am, and I've got a lot of free reign with the company, and they're allowing me to do my, expand the brand in New Zealand, Australia with New Japan Tamashii. So, I kind of, enjoy what I'm doing. So right now, that's where I am.
Okay. Before we get out of here, two more things. Who is your favorite? If you could pinpoint, if someone never met you and they said, who is your favorite opponent? Who is it?
Oh, I'd say Yano Toru.
Okay. And do you remember which event or which event it was that you wrestled him?
Oh man, I've had so many angles with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yano Toru is, man, one of the funniest and easiest guys to wrestle.
Awesome. And my last question is, where can fans find you on social media? Where they can buy your merch, talk about, if they're interested in maybe training over at your school and whatever upcoming events you have.
Yes, you can find me at Talks Fale at on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. You can also find me at Talks Fale 8 on TikTok. Big TikTok guy here, so find me there. Also, the Fale Dojo, if faledojo.com, if you're looking for high intense professional type wrestling training, faledojo.com. And we got a couple of New Japan Tamashii shows coming up soon, and that should be announced in a couple of weeks.
Awesome. Well, Fale, man, like I said at the beginning of the interview, this was an honor for me, for someone that I've watched you wrestle for a long time, you know what I mean? And just being able to connect with New Japan as a fan and just seeing the growth. I mean, the fact that there's New Japan t-shirts being sold in Hot Topic over here says a lot. You know what I mean? Like this may have been 2016, 2017, 2018, I think. And I'm literally in Hot Topic and I'm seeing Bullet Club t-shirts all in there. I'm like, this is working. And I loved it because I love the fact that all the boys and girls in the business, I want them to make money. You know what I mean? I want people to continue to make money and make a living in this wonderful business. So again, thank you so much for giving me your time, and again, we're in opposite sides of of the planet here, but thank you, man. And I look forward to talking to you down the road.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Well, that does it for this week's edition of the D-Lew Podcast. Again, I want to thank Bad Luck Fale for taking the time, like seriously, out of his extremely busy schedule, running his wrestling school, and he's on the opposite side of the world. He's in New Zealand. I'm over in the eastern part of the United States. So there was a huge time difference, but we were able to make it work. And again, I'm really, really appreciative that he wanted to come onto the D-Lew Podcast and talk about wrestling. But this weekend, you can catch me ring announcing for ECWA and their Super 8 tournament, one of the most premier events in all of independent pro wrestling. They're at the Dugout in Morganville, New Jersey. Tickets are on sale right now at ecwawrestling.com. You can see all of the stars of ECWA in addition to those taking part of the Super 8 tournament. You can check me out on social media, which is Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok at The Real DT-Lew. You can also go onto my Facebook page, Derrick T. Lewis official page. Get your Derrick T. Lewis merchandise over at shop.derricklewis.com. Again, you can get all of your t-shirts and hoodies right at my merchandise store. Well, I'm going to get out of here, and just remember, whatever you do in life, always remember to make it count. See you next time.